That's your seat at the table, and you need to take it. So one of the things that I've come to realize over the years of being a believer is that my condition is not what makes me a child of God. You see, my condition is one that can fluctuate and change. And if you're honest with me, I bet you yours is too, because there's days that you go out here and you get it right. And then the very next day you seem to get everything wrong. And it's not because you want to, it's just because you're human. And your tendency, like me, is probably to beat yourself up and think that God now, he doesn't love you anymore. He doesn't care for you anymore. And you're solely focused completely on your condition. You see, but your condition is it's not what made you a child of God to start with. Your bank account means nothing. You're the size of that, the church affiliation, your church membership is not what makes you a child of God. Your political party is not what makes you a child of God. It is simply your position in Christ that makes you a child of God. And that's all there is to it, because your condition changes and it fluctuates, but your position in Christ does not. And that is what makes you and me a child of God. Listen, Ephesians 2, and I'm going to read this. It says, "But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace that we have been saved." It is not by our works. It is not by the conditions around us or the conditions of my head, thankfully. But that also means that I am a joint heir with Christ. Romans 8 says that as a believer, I am a joint heir with Christ. Now, that is really hard to wrap my mind around, because I'm like, wait a second, a believer, and wait a minute, I'm a joint heir with Christ? I mean, that's a lot. Years ago, I was in the insurance industry, and we did some financial things, and I went with one of my friends to see this lady who was inheriting this large sum of money, and she didn't know she was inheriting it, but we thought she did. And so he's sitting there at the table and we're sharing this information with her. And the more that we share with her, the further in her chair she goes back. And it quickly becomes very apparent to us that she has no idea that she is inheriting well over $1 million. Now, I'd love to be in that position. I would love to know what a struggle that is. But, here she was. And I thought, after we left there and the pastor mind started kicking in, I thought, wait a second, I'm a joint heir with Christ. And I'm not an heir because of my condition, but I'm an heir because of my position. You see, that lady that inherited that amount of money, it wasn't because of her good condition. It wasn't because of her good looks. It wasn't because of her membership somewhere. It wasn't any of those things that made her an heir. It was simply one thing that made her an heir, and that was her position, because the one who had passed away had chosen her to be the heir. You see, there might have been others around her that were better than her. There might have been others that were more qualified than she was, but she was not the one. They were not the ones that were chosen. She was, and she was an heir because of her position. You see, but if I'm an heir because of my position, then that means also in Ephesians 2, it actually says that I have been seated with Christ in heavenly places. So that means as an heir, I also have a seat at the table. And here's what I want to encourage you today, because I struggled with this for years, because I thought, I see people doing things for God, and I see God using people in great ways. And I'd really love that. But the truth is, I'm not worthy. I'm really not worthy. And what we really see in our minds is this table. And at this table, there's this empty seat. And we're waiting on somebody to come fill that empty seat. And we think, maybe that seat's mine, but we're like, no, that can't be mine, because I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough. There's somebody else that is. There's somebody else that has their name on the church membership, but there's somebody else that has a bigger bank account than me. There's somebody else that speaks better or teaches better, or somebody that looks better than me. But the truth is, that seat that you're looking at is going to stay empty, because it's not anybody else's seat but yours. It is your seat. And God is saying to you today to come and take your seat at the table, because that seat has got your name on it. And when you sit down at the table with the Father, you get to hear what the Father's saying. You get to do what the Father's doing. You get to eat what the Father's eating. So I say, just like me, it's time to quit flirting in the banquet hall, if you will, smelling the things there, seeing the things, hearing things from afar, when we can actually sit at the table, because God has given us a seat to sit down there for us, not because of our condition, but simply and only because of our position in Christ do we have a seat at that table. And I say to you today, what are you waiting for? Stop flirting with it. Take your seat at the table. Love you guys.